Lamed Gimel Lamed Beis 33b. The line begins with the word ha'asoi, and the second word is va'amar. It's about a little bit lower than halfway through the page. It's a bit lower. Yeah. Va'amar Rava. Rava says. So we finished discussing. We went through the positioning of the mezuzah on the door, its height, its depth in terms of how deep within the actual door frame, closer to the entrance, and we discussed how that should be closer to the entrance. Also, how deep it is, literally, if it can be like in a groove in the doorpost. We talked about it can't be more than a tefach, more than a handbreadth deep within the wall. Now we're going to get discussing what type of rooms and what type of doors and what kind of structures will carry a mezuzah, after having discussed where on the doorpost it should be positioned. Okay, so Omar Rava says, Hani Petichi Shimai, I think that's how you pronounce the word. These broken doors, or old doors that have been like broken, they're old and ruined. The Gemara is going to quantify exactly what that means in a moment. So Rava said because they're old, they're no longer proper doors, because they're broken, because they're no longer proper doors, then Petorim and a mezuzah, they are exempt from having a mezuzah.
When you say doors, you're not talking about the swinging.
No, doors, I mean, yeah, so the word, that's a good point, because the Gemara does not say delas, but petri, meaning openings. Yeah, so even if it's missing a physical door which swings, if it's an opening, it still requires mezuzah. That's correct. Sorry, yeah. That's well, actually, the truth is, at least according to one version of the Gemara you mentioned earlier, you mentioned from the Rambam, which says you need to have a door. But the accepted halachic understanding is that doesn't need necessarily a swinging door, as long as there's a door post and a door frame. And kind of that discussion is a little bit going to come up now as to what qualifies as a door frame. We're going to be discussing a little bit about that today. So you're right, I should be more accurate in my translation, not door, but opening. These old openings, or entrances, or broken entrances, and mezuzah are exempt from mezuzah. So what's the definition of a broken entrance? What's considered a broken entrance? So pligi ba rav rechumi va'aba yosi. So it's a dispute between a sage named Rechumi and a sage named Abba Yosi. The Gemara doesn't tell us who said what. The Gemara said that the two of them were discussing, and the Gemara gives us the two opinions. So one said one, and one said the other. Chadam, one said, the leslu tikra, that it has no roof. I'm translating literally, and we'll get into discussion about that in the halacha. The Chadam, the other says, the leslu shekufi, that it doesn't have a lintel. That was the word, right?
Yeah. Top part.
Sorry? The cross beam at the top of the door frame. So the question is, what does the word "it doesn't have a roof" mean? What doesn't have a roof? Let's see Rashi. So let's see Rashi on the left. The line begins with the word ticker. You see the bold word ticker, the button in the left column. The Rashi's column. So it's farther down in the Gemara. You'll see where it says tikra. There's like a line which ends with like a parenthesis that has daf lamed beis and beis with two dots, and then it says tikra. Yeah? You have it there? Michael, you have it?
Is it under the word shmai?
Yes. Yeah. So, in defining what this broken door means, so we had one that says it doesn't have a roof, and one that says it doesn't have a lintel. So let's see what this means. So tikra, Rashi says when the Mishnah says, when the Gemara says, that what can constitute a broken entrance or a broken door is it doesn't have a roof. Rashi says askuf el yona. That's talking about the lintel. So when one opinion says that a door that's missing a roof doesn't need a mezuzah, it means the door doesn't have a lintel. So the other word shkufi has to mean something else.
Yeah.
Right. So we have to have another definition. So. And this remains the halacha. This is the halacha. A door doesn't have a lintel, does not require mezuzah. Part of the defining features of a door is that it has a frame on the top.
It also said a broken door. Did it?
Broken entrance.
Broken entrance, meaning that the broken aspect is that it doesn't have the roof, or is
That's what Rashi says it.
Okay.
That one definition of not being a broken door is that it doesn't have a lintel, which means even if it's not broken, but it's made such it doesn't have a lintel, then it's not required. It doesn't require mezuzah. So, for example, classic example: if the way in which you get into a room is just by having two walls that don't close, that go straight to the roof. So there's no official door because there's no ledge in the top. You're not required to have mezuzah there. So think of, let's say, it's very common, and especially homes here, where you walk into like a foyer room and then you enter into the house, and then you go from the foyer room into the living room and dining room. But when you get into the living room and dining room, there's no door that takes you to the living room and dining room. It's just the walls of the living room and dining room that don't close, so it's an opening to that thing. That area does not require mezuzah.
Chabad puts mezuzah.
You're speaking to my parents have one.
Because when you came to do it,
Yeah, so we do it l'chumra.
that's exactly what I have.
That's right, but it's not required. It's not required by halacha, which means if it fell down, you wouldn't make a bracha and you put it back up. Even though it's not required by halacha, to have it, even though many have it as a chumrah, because there's no prohibition against having mezuzah there. So we do it because it's kind of an entrance. I have one in my house also, even though I'm not required to have one, and my parents also have one, even though we're not required.
It's kind of like carved out of the wall. Ours is like this, like rounded.
So there is a drop of ceiling that comes down from. There's a drop of wall that comes down.
There's no.
There's no ledge.
There's
Okay.
no ledge it's just carved out of the
So
wall.
that might be considered a ledge. It just doesn't have a trimming.
Doesn't have a trim. No.
Right, so it might be considered a ledge still, nonetheless, because there's a little bit of wall that drops down from the roof, making it into a ledge. So that actually might be required.
Like this
But in my
there's a little bit of a.
that has a full trimming there,
That is a full.
trimming on the top.
lintel.
Yeah, that has an actual full lintel. So that might actually be required
You
even.
mean when it goes right to the ceiling?
Yeah, we just the walls of the two rooms don't close all the way,
Yeah.
so the walls end and it goes all the way to the ceiling. There's no ledge in the top.
Would it be concealed underneath the walling?
Say it again.
Like if this were just to go straight up.
But you didn't see it out.
You didn't see it, but because it's covered by.
The fact that the structure
happened.
happened, no, it has to do with the presentation, how it looks. I don't think if there happens to be a lintel inside the roof that you don't see. I don't think that would matter.
We have that.
Sorry,
We have that.
two walls don't close, making it entrance without any ledge. Do you have mezuzah there? So that wouldn't be required halachically, which means that if it fell, you wouldn't make a bracha. Even though, as I mentioned, it's very common. L'chumra, people have one anyway. I have one in my house. In such a door, even though I don't need one. Mine is even less required because it's not even two walls don't close. It's like one wall that makes an L shaped and another wall that halfway pops out. So there really is no, but still is mezuzah there anyway. Even though I don't really need one. Anyway.
Another $50.
Sorry?
Another $50.
Yeah. We wasted money on worse things. All right. So if the first definition, right, there's two definitions the Gemara gives as to what's considered a broken. Sorry, I'm just close the door for a second. I got it. Thank you.
It's official.
Sorry,
It's official.
it's Pesach. The carpet cleaners are here. It means Pesach is coming. Okay, so one definition of the broken wall. There's two definitions in the Gemara. One, Rashi said, one literally means it doesn't have a roof, and Rashi said that means it doesn't have the lintel, which means the other definition can't be talking about the lintel. So what's that talking about? Shkufi, says Rashi. Mezuzah, it's talking about it doesn't have door frame. Mezuzah literally means door frame. The word mezuzah that we use to describe that scroll comes from the verse saying that you should write these words on the mezuzahs, on the doorposts. Write them on the doorposts of your home. So Rashi has two different versions. One is it's lacking a lintel. Second one, it's lacking a door frame. So say you had a room that had three walls, right? The fourth wall was completely open, but it had a trimming at the top of the roof, so it gave it a lintel. But it doesn't have any
It's got a definition.
door frame. It doesn't have any door frames. No mezuzah. This is what Rashi says, and that's also the halacha. We'll kind of learn about that soon. A three-walled structure that doesn't have that the entrance is just an opening of a fourth wall doesn't need a mezuzah. That's one definition of the two things that make a door broken, lacking a lintel or lacking doorposts. Now, Lishna Achrina, Rashi gives another opinion. Tikra, what does it mean? It's lacking a roof. She'ena bayis makarda, that the home is lacking a roof. The room inside the doors is lacking a roof. and that's when it's not required to have mezuzah.
Which is this again? Sorry.
This isn't, but there were two versions of the Gemara as to what's considered a broken door. Lacking a roof, and this other word called shkufi. So what does it mean lacking a roof? What's lacking a roof? So the first version of Rashi was the door itself is lacking a roof, it's lacking the lintel. So lacking shkufi means it's lacking doorposts. Okay. Now another version of what it means to be lacking a roof, it's not that the door frame is lacking a roof, but the actual room is lacking a roof. And then what does shkufi mean? Shkufi means askufa al. This means the lintel. So it comes down that there are three different things that can make the room not require mezuzah, even though the Gemara only gives two. Right? But depending on what the definition of the two things are, you come to three different things that can make a room not require mezuzah. One, lacking a lintel. Two, lacking door frames, doorposts. And three, the roof itself is lacking. The room itself is lacking a roof. Okay, this is the way. If you take the two versions of Rashi, one translation overlaps. Right, the word roof in the first translation is the same thing as shkufi in the other translation. So one of the definitions overlap in the two different versions, and then you have three. So you making a total of three different things that can make them not require. Clear?
Yeah, but for the doorpost, if there's one, that wouldn't count.
One doorpost, not another.
Yeah. I mean,
Good question. I don't know the answer.
practically.
I don't know the answer to the question, but these things do come up, and maybe I'll have a look later, God willing. I don't know the answer to that question. Okay, so we have these three definitions. Now let's look at Tosfos on the right. It's an important Tosfos because it leads us to the halacha. So on the right side, yeah, Tosfos is the right side. The second Tosfos, so it's like the fourth line with big bold words, the less lahu tikra. It doesn't have a roof. So says Tosfos, Pirush, this means, so he gives a whole different definition to what this means, lacking a roof and lacking a shkufi. You see it?
No.
On the right side, the right column. Right there, the less. That's it. So Pirush just means Makom Sha Pesach Shoykif, the place where the opening at the top has its hangover, as its lintel. Milamayla ein shava. It's not even. Elavonim min akipa, but rather the stones that are at the top of the door frame. Even nechneses, one stone is indented, even yitzes, and one stone is popping out. So he says a broken door means literally a broken door, meaning you had a wall and you crashed it open and you made your entranceway. So what happens when you crash open a wall? It doesn't come in an even square. So you have one stone popping in, one stone popping out. That's what it means it's a broken roof, says Tosfos. The Ka'inyan Zan, similarly, the Leslie Shekufi, that doesn't have the Shekufi, which he also says means it's lacking the doorposts. She'ain Sham Mezuzahs, it doesn't have proper doorpost. Elavonim Boltus, the stones are popping in and out. Like teeth of a wall, meaning popping in, out, in, out, and out. It's just a hole in the wall. That's the way Tosfos understands this. So he has a different version of what this means. If I'm not mistaken, this is the halacha too. Break down a wall, it's not considered a door. So it's a fourth definition of things that make it, and all of these definitions are actually halachically true. All four definitions. If it's lacking a lintel, it doesn't not require mezuzah. Lacking doorpost doesn't mean mezuzah. Broken, there's no roof inside the room, also no mezuzah, as we'll see in a moment. And as well, if you broke a wall and you hadn't made a proper door frame, then not required mezuzah. Okay, Inyan Zen, similar to this Isa Perikam, the Erevin is discussed in Tractate Erevin. Gabe Sukkah with respect to a Sukkah. Okay. Now, Tosfos takes issue with Rashi's definition, or one of Rashi's definitions. Now, Masha Pirush HaKontres, that which the pamphlet explained, we mentioned before that that Rashi's initial commentary is referred to as the pamphlet. Presumably it was published in installments and pamphlets. And Lashon Acher, in his second interpretation, where he said, the less the tikra, that when the Gemara says it's lacking a roof, she'ena bias makaira, that the roof itself, that the room or the home itself into which you are walking is lacking a roof. Right? That was one of the definitions. That it's lacking a roof. Says Tosfos, Kasha, this is strange to me. Why would it not be obligated mezuzah? Why? Because the roof why because there's no roof in the house would it make you not require mezuzah? Mi garden mishari chatzeres. Why is it any different than every other courtyard? The chayav mezuzah, which is required in mezuzah. The Gemara says in Yuma, and the pasuk says clearly, on the doorposts of your home and your gates. Gates meaning gates to your courtyards. Courtyards don't have roofs, so why all of a sudden when this home doesn't have a roof, does not require mezuzah?
It's an obvious answer.
Sorry.
It's an obvious
Let's
answer.
get to the first to understand the question. This question is also a question.
It's when the question is there. but
Yeah,
it's obvious.
so we'll get to the answer. But it's a good question. What Taisus is asking is, the verse itself tells you that the definition of what requires a mezuzah is not based on what's inside the room, but rather whether the door frame is proper. Proof, even when you walk into a courtyard and it's not considered a room, you couldn't. It's open to the sky, but because the door is proper, you need a mezuzah. So why here, just because there's a hole in the roof, does not get a mezuzah?
So, just would say that you got a gate to your backyard. You have a mezuzah, a fenced-in backyard, like many
Absolutely.
people have with
And we'll see in a minute. Even Rashi would agree that it requires mezuzah. And yet, when this house has a hole in it, when this house is lacking a roof, it still has no mezuzah. So let's see. Take these other copies here. This is the Rosh, Rabbi Usher. He's a halachic commentator on the Gemara. I'll see you. Have a good day. And here he says, on the right-hand column on the top is the Rosh.
When the action gets tough, you leave, eh? When the action gets tough, you leave.
Yeah. So on the right-hand column, if you go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines from the bottom of the first section of the right-hand column. So where the paragraph ends in the right-hand column, go up 5 lines, or 6 lines from the bottom, if you will. Yeah? Now there's a period in the middle and it says Umma Shapir Rashi. Umma. Word right there, yeah, Umma. You see it? There's a period and it says Umma.
Yeah.
Now, so he mentions he mentions the 2 different opinions in Rashi, which gives you 3 definitions, right? The 2 different opinions in Rashi give you 3 definitions. 1 that's lacking a lintel, 2 that's lacking a doorpost, and 3 that the room itself has no roof. And then he brings Taisus' definition, where you literally broke down a wall, and therefore the door frame is kind of like it's not neat. It's a bunch of stones popping in and out. And then he says, Ma Shapirish Rashi, and that which Rashi said, but Lish in the second version, the less the Tikra, that when the Gemara says that it's lacking a roof, meaning, says Rashi, She'en Abayis Makoida, that the roof itself, that the home itself is lacking a roof. This was one of Rashi's definitions. Kasher, the Rosh asked the question, the same question that the Tosfos asked, the mi gara mishari chatzeres. Why is it any different than any other entrance to any other courtyard which has no roof? The chayav mezuzah, which you're required to have mezuzah. As the Gemara says in Yuma. Good morning. So he asked the same question Tosfos does, but he gives an answer, and this answer is accepted in halacha. V'yesh leimar. We might suggest. Here, yeah, there's one right there. V'yesh leimar. We might suggest, says the Rosh. The ein nayim machatz lebayis. Do not compare courtyards to homes. The chatzer, that a courtyard, darka liyas kach. That's the way it's meant to be. Courtyards are meant to be without a roof. Umeshamish lediras habatim, and it serves to those who live in the home as an open air space. That's the point. Have a bias, but a home which lacks a roof, ein royal beis dira, is not livable because she'ein makarda when it doesn't have a roof. The Rambam writes the same thing. The bias she'ein letikra, that a home that has no roof doesn't require mezuzah. So let's explain what's going on here. When Tosfos asks this question about a room that's lacking a roof, you say it doesn't have to have mezuzah, but a courtyard does have mezuzah. Contradiction. So where was Tosfos coming from? Tosfos is coming from a perspective of look at the door. What happens inside doesn't matter. Whether it's a courtyard, roof, no roof, doesn't matter. If the door is a proper door, it requires a mezuzah. Comes the Rosh and says, no. We are looking at the room into which you are walking. But when we look at that room, we're asking, is that room built the way it's supposed to be built? Is it livable for its standards?
Which opinion is this by?
This is the Rosh explaining Rashi.
Okay.
So we look at the room inside, But we ask ourselves, is the room inside functioning as the room is supposed to? So when you're walking into a courtyard and there's no roof and rain comes down and it goes right to the ground, it's still behaving the way it's supposed to. That's the way a courtyard's supposed to be behaving. And therefore the door and the room you're walking into is a proper door and a proper room. But when you walk into a home that's set like a living room or a bedroom and there's a massive hole in the roof, you're moving out for a couple of days. No one moves out of their courtyard because it's lacking a roof. But you will move out of your house if it's lacking a roof until it's fixed. And therefore, the room isn't functioning as a proper living space. No mezuzah. Even though the door frame is perfect. Following? So don't compare, says the Rosh, a courtyard to a home. They each have their own modes of living, and therefore they each get their own definition. Tosfos is saying, ignore what's inside the room. Look at the door. The door is a proper door. Mezuzah. The door is not a proper door because you broke down a wall. No mezuzah. And comes the Rosh and says, yes, that's a good starting point, but there's something else to consider. And it's true if you broke down a wall, no mezuzah, but there's something else to consider. Is the room you're walking into a proper living space? Now, if it's a courtyard and has no roof, it's a proper living space. If it's a living room or dining room or bedroom that has no roof, then it's not a proper living space. Even though both the courtyard and the bedroom have no roof. The difference is one's a proper living space, one's not a proper living space. So comes the halacha and says like this. So the halacha Siman Reish Pei Vav, Yeridei Siman Reish Pei Vav, 286. Sorry? Yeridei, which is part 2 of the Shulchan Aruch.
Is it Yudalad?
Yudalad, yes. I'm looking for where it talks about the lintel. Eze Pesach. Yeah. So in Reish Pei Zayin, in 287, it opens up by saying that a mezuzah, a door, in order for a door to require mezuzah, in order for a door to be obligated mezuzah, it needs to have 2 doorposts and a lintel. Two doorposts, yes. And then it discusses whether or not the top lintel is like a dome or not, and what that is, but that's not for now. But to answer your question, it's true it has to have 2. Although the Shach quotes from the Rosh that even if it has 1, it still requires mezuzah. Only if it's on the right side, not on the left side. And he concludes by saying that you should put it up without a bracha. It's actually the one that I have in my house only has on the left side. The right side is just a wall. So there's some more discussion about that, whether it has one.
Meaning the flow of traffic is...
Yeah, in my house, the flow of traffic, the left side is like a kind of like a door frame, but at the end it doesn't mean it anyway because it doesn't have a lintel.
Okay.
Either way. But I can see there's a Taz here also, so obviously there's some discussion. So we can leave that for now about whether or not, what's the story with a one post. We'll leave that for now because I see it's a discussion. But at any rate, for our discussion here, the Shulchan Aruch says like this. I'm just going to translate. A home that doesn't have a roof, it's not a courtyard, it's a home. So it's not a proper living space. So pater, it's exempt from having mezuzah. Now, if it was partially roofed and partially not roofed, so there's a hole in the roof, right? Because if we're defining it by living space as being a proper living space, then this is a real question. In other words, if the entire roof in your bedroom collapsed, okay, you're going to move out. But if take your dining room, your living room, your dining room, and there's a hole in the far left corner, so you'll get it fixed. But you're going to move out of the house now. You might still sit and eat in your dining room. You'll put a bucket in the corner to catch the rain if it's raining until the guy comes to fix it, right? It's not unusual.
But I don't think that's the case because presumably in that instance the mezuzah would have been already on the door, right?
Okay, so you bought a house that way. Let's say. Now just to put it up now, let's just say in theory. But we're defining it by, is that a livable space? So not every time there's a hole in the roof does it become not livable anymore. So how do I define whether or not I'm walking into a livable space? So I have to define where the hole is and how big it is.
How big a hole?
So let's see. If the roof So now, if it's no roof completely, so it's not livable, no mezuzah. If it's partially roofed, but that roofing is near the entrance, so which means I walked into the door. Right when I walk through the door, I'm walking into a livable space. Even though I take 6 steps forward, I'm not livable space because I'm under a hole. But right when I walk through the door, I am in a livable space because there's a roof. Then chayiv mezuzah, I'm required to have mezuzah. For who? And this is she mekayda dal dal daled. So long as when you walk into the door, there is 4 cubits by 4 cubits of roof space, which means when I walk through the door, I am standing in a livable space. Even though when I take 6-7 steps forward, I'm not in a livable space anymore because there's a hole in the roof. No mezuzah.
That's also the same measurements for the requirement of the mezuzah.
That's correct. That's correct. In order for the door to be required mezuzah, you have to be walking into a livable space. The definition of a livable space is a space that's at least 4 cubits by 4 cubits. So then, if I walked into a room and there's a hole in the far left corner, but right when I walked in here, I'm standing under 4 cubits by 4 cubits of roof, then I walked into a livable space, even though somewhere else in the room is not livable. And thus the door leads to a livable space and therefore is required mezuzah. But if I walked into the room and the hole was right under the door, so the door never led to a livable space, doesn't require mezuzah until that roof is fixed. Once the roof is fixed, then put mezuzah. So now let me ask you, can I put the mezuzah before and then put the roof on?
No, that's Messiah.
Why?
That's Messiah.
No? We had this before. That if you put the mezuzah on the door frame on the floor, that's right. You have to be made it when the mitzvah is required. Right? Which means, so if I had a door frame going right into a room where there was a hole right in front of the door frame, meaning that I didn't walk into a livable space, but I put a mezuzah anyway because I want it to be machmer, and then I fixed the roof. What would I have to do? Remove the mezuzah and put it back with the baracha. Because I have to do the act of putting it on. It can't be pre-made. Similar to the issue we mentioned last week, where a person puts a mezuzah on a door frame that's on the floor and then raises the door frame into the door. You can't do that because the mezuzah is put up pre-made. And the same thing will be here, right? The room that you're putting mezuzah on has to be eligible and require mezuzah before you actually put it on. And in this case, where the roof is lacking, it's not required until that roof is. That's right. So we're learning more and more how many details and how important it is in all these laws. It's not just the writing of mezuzah to make sure you're getting it from the proper scribe, but when you're placing it, to know where, when, and how you're placing it, and when you're required a bracha, when you're not required a bracha, when you're doing it because you're obligated, when you're doing it because you're just going to be machmer. You want to be extra stringent, so you add a mezuzah. These are all important things to know. Have a wonderful day, everybody.
Courtyard, if your house is that